Hey there, this is Mohini Chaudhary, Assistant Professor VIT. I welcome you all on the behalf of CSI VIT for our next webinar, that is functional programming. First of all, since today is Engineers Day, I would like to wish you all a very happy Engineers Day. Guys, you must be knowing or not knowing, I don't know, but just to inform you, Engineers Day is in India is celebrated as a tribute to the greatest Indian engineer and Bharat Ratna, Sir Moksha Gundam Vishwavaraya, and is popularly known as Sir MV. You would be amazed to know that he completed his basic education in, that means his undergraduation in arts, and later on he changed his track and did civil engineering from College of Engineering of Pune, and later on he has contributed a lot to the India's reservoirs and irrigation system. So today on this Engineers Day, we have a hardcore engineer who is enrooted deeply into coding, and he will be talking about functional programming and how nowadays functional programming is booming in the IT industry. He will be boosting your confidence and making you fall in love with coding. So let's start with the webinar. Heading over to you, sir. You can start your session. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mohini madam, and good evening, everyone. Myself, Professor Sanjeev Dwivedi. I am Assistant Professor in Department of Computer Engineering. I am teaching since 2006. I've done my Masters in Computer Engineering. I'm pursuing my PhD in Computer Engineering. Well, my area of interest includes data structure, algorithms, and machine learning, of course. I mean, who doesn't like machine learning? I mean, who is computer engineer who doesn't like machine learning nowadays? Now, the topic is functional programming. Now, before I, start functional programming, this is kind of controversial in the sense that uh, the PPT is not displayed. Hello. Is PPT getting this? Okay, fine. Sorry. I thought that PPT is not displayed. So before I start with functional programming, this topic may offend people nowadays because, up till a year back, I was still the person who have lived and loved object-oriented programming language throughout my life. I mean, it all started in 2001 when I started my engineering. I studied C and then C++, Java. I studied Python, C#. So I thought, like, yes, object-oriented programming is the ultimate solution to every problem that we as a programmer face or we as a developer face. Up to a year back. But yes, I was exposed to some kind of literature. I was exposed to some kind of resources. And then I've gone through some videos, sessions, video lecture series that have actually made me sit back and think about functional programming. So yes, to some extent, I am attracted to functional programming. And the ultimate aim of this session is just to introduce the student the concept of functional programming. Now, when I say introduce, I eventually want you to fall in love with this. Now, since people are already in love with object-oriented programming, so you know what? If I want you to make, you fall in love with functional programming, I have to teach you to hate object-oriented programming. Well, now I have offended many people, including myself. Why to hate object-oriented programming? Millions of developers across the globe are thriving on it. There are billions of lines of code written just to serve the purpose of object-oriented programming. And all of a sudden, this person is saying, कि भाई नफरत करो object-oriented programming से. Well, hate, I know, is a strong word. I mean, it is a strong reaction. But then, let it be. I'm okay with it. I will use the word hate because eventually the few things that I'll be discussing, the few pillars of object-oriented programming, which always I thought will serve it forever and it will remain till eternity, I believe it is crumbling down its own weight. And in due course, we will see And well, the overall flow will be like, I'll be first teaching you the limitations, shortcomings of object oriented programming, the myth that we have, engulfed ourselves for object oriented programming, and then eventually we will see the new horizon what functional programming presents you to. Well, before we move with the session, first something about my institute, VIT, one of the prominent engineering institute, and recently we got awarded with A plus from NAC. We have also have our THEE program accredited by NBA. Well, this journey of VIT started with vision and labor of great late Professor Chandrasekhar Deshpande, an ex-IRSC officer and ex-research scholar at TIFR. Today being Engineer Day, it's best to pay our respect to him. It's his vision of VIT to be recognized globally as an institute where the learners are nurtured in scholarly environment to evolve into a competent professional and researcher. At VIT, we have UG, PG, and PhD courses in various branches of engineering. We have INFT, computers, EXTC, electronics, biomed. We have MMS. For further information, I'll request you to visit the website of my institute. So this is about my institute, Vidyalankar Institute of Technology. Let's move ahead. Well, it's my privilege actually that I got the opportunity to address you on Engineers Day. Mohini Madam have already, greeted you for this, but then I'll take my chance. And as we all know, this day is celebrated as the birth anniversary of legendary engineer Dr. Mokshagundam Visvesvaraya, who with his vision and dedication in field of engineering made exceptional contribution to India. Owing to this, he was honored the highest civilian award, the Bharat Ratna, in year 1955. He is recognized internationally for his genius in harnessing water resource, successful designing and construction of several dams. Well, to note one, it's Krishna Raga Sagar Dam, bridges, implementing irrigation and drinking water schemes all over India. And up till now, the people of our generation have reaped the benefit of it. We are forever indebted to him and his contribution. And now, important, the onus lies on us to contribute significantly in the development of nation. We must not go after, only high-level theoretical concept. Obviously, it is important. It is important. The theoretical research do play important role, but the most important thing is to start working on idea and solving real world problem. We should get our hand dirty with code. I mean, this is what I would like you to understand. Now, if you look around, all these smart startups that are turning into big industries, they all are engineers. And what they are doing, they are trying to solve real world problem. See, if you leave apart SpaceX, जो actually पृथ्वी के कक्षा के बाहर जाके काम करना चाहता है, I mean, if you leave about SpaceX or if you consider all other, organization around, they are solving problems which have been existing up till now. Let's talk about, the Kirana shop, the book selling shop was always there. But when an engineer decides to open a Kirana shop, when an engineer decides to open a online bookshop, well, we have Amazon. The transport wala was always there. Whenever we wanted to go somewhere, we used to go and hire these cabs from these people. But when an engineer decides to be a transport wala, we have Ola, Uber. Housing agent was always there. These, guys used to harass us whenever we want to take a house on rent or purchase. But when an engineer decides to become a housing agent, we have housing.com, we have 99 acres and many more. In fact, when an engineer decides to sell car, we have Cars 24. When an engineer decides to be an insurance agent, we have Policy Bazaar. So, you can understand there is always somewhere someone solving some real world problems. So all we need to do is look around, identify, and work on it. And we must, on this day, promise to ourselves that we will be doing it in coming time. So go learn coding, participate in coding competitions, hackathon, and this will definitely teach you a lot. So with these words, I once again greet you for Engineers Day. Well, before we foray into functional programming, let me talk something about programming paradigm. Now, if I googled programming paradigm and Google Dictionary gives me this meaning. It says it is a noun. I mean, it is a noun which means pattern of something, model, methodology. So, the programming paradigm basically refers to different style, different methodology, pattern that can be employed to write a program. When it comes to programming paradigm, we have two prominent types. The first one is imperative programming. Well, it is one of the oldest programming model. It works on Turing principle. Now, what your programmer does is the programmer instruct the machine how to change the state. Now, the state is very important word because I'll be talking a lot about this state. The programmer instruct the machine how to change the state. Well, here it features close relation to machine architecture. Yes, imperative programming emphasizes a lot on your machine architecture. So it basically built on von Neumann architecture. It works by changing the programming state through assignment, statement, loop. So we have loop, we have for I equal to 1 to 10. Well, it's a simple example where value of I changes from 1 to 10. So there is stepwise instruction where the variables, the object operates in terms of changing their state. Well, the advantage is it is simple and we can express it in form of loop or variables. This is imperative programming. Well, declarative programming. Frankly speaking, let me confess, I was not very much aware of this programming paradigm up till a year ago. Trust me. Because I was never infatuated to this. I never heard much of this. This is true, and I'm confessing this. You know what? In declarative programming, it expresses the logic of computation without talking much about control flow. It will not talk about that value goes from here to here. No, it will not talk about control flow. It basically expresses the things in terms of computational logic. It considers program as theories of some logic. It focuses on what needs to be done and not how it should be done. So when you say how, it's a stepwise instruction, that's imperative. Declarative focus more on how, what is to be done. So in declaration, we have what. Now, eventually we will understand that when we have imperative programming, we will write program in terms of statement. Yes, imperative programming. I mean, you guess yourself. When I'm talking about this generation, it all started with C, I guess. C, C++. People learning. Python, Java. So this code, whatever you're talking about, you're expressing it in terms of statement. When in declaration, we will not write in terms of statement. We will write in terms of expressions. See. Like the way I said, it focuses more on what needs to be done and not how it will be done. So the intention here is just to declare the result we want rather than how it is produced. So declarative programming intends to declare the result and not emphasize much on how the result is produced. So now let us see in detail each programming paradigm. When it comes to imperative programming, well, in imperative programming, it's broadly divided into two categories. Of course, when you go ahead and search for resources, the different materials will divide it into further more categories, like some says parallel processing also is an imperative programming, but here I'll broadly consider only two. The first is procedural programming. Now, what is procedural programming? Well, the programming language that you have written, like C, Fortran, Pascal, Basic, these are all procedural programming. And what happens here is, here we group the instructions into procedures. We group the instruction into procedures and we split the code into smaller units called functions or procedure. Why do we do that? So it becomes easy for us to reuse and the flow of execution of the control is from top to bottom. Well, in procedural programming, the emphasis is not on data. The priority is not on data. In procedural programming, like you must have studied in C, we have global variables, we have local variable. Now, according to me, this is my intuition that global variable actually causes a lot of problem in procedural programming because when there is a large set of program and with global variable, there can be a lot of question with regards to the belonging of the global variable. The global data is very prone to error and difficult to maintain. Well, it will also enhance the difficulty of programming. Yes, code, in fact, difficulty will be enhanced when it comes to global data, and this is what you will experience in further programming languages like that you must have studied in Java. There is no such concept of global variable, and even when it comes to C sharp, which is again an object-oriented programming, there is no such concept. So the global data, like the way I said, it's an error prone. It does not model the real world problem very well. Why? Because when it comes to procedures, when it comes to functions, they are more action oriented and not really corresponds to the element of the program. So these are something about procedural. The next one is object oriented. We have C++, Java, Python, C sharp, etc. The object oriented emphasizes more on data rather than on procedure. It allows the decomposition of program into entities, and these entities, what we call it as object. And then we build data and function around these objects. Well, encapsulation. So like the way you must have heard, the wrapping of data and function together in a class is encapsulation. So basically the idea is we will try to identify different entities in terms of object, and then we build around our data, we'll build around our functions around these objects. So here, the basic intention of object-oriented programming, try to understand, object-oriented programming per se has no problem actually. I know I just mentioned on the start of my session, I will be asked, I'll be making you hate object-oriented. But let me confess, object-oriented paradigm per se does not have any such problem because it was initially meant to be just pass the message. I mean, this was all the object was supposed to do. We will learn it in due course. मैंने कहा ना कि मैं बहुत सारे बातें करूंगा ऑब्जेक्ट ओरिएंटेड के बारे में बिकॉज अगर मैं चाहता हूं कि आप फंक्शनल प्रोग्रामिंग को चाहो तो आपको ऑब्जेक्ट ओरिएंटेड से नफरत करनी पड़ेगी जैसे मैंने कहा था. The object-oriented programming basically employs the bottom-up approach, and I mean we are aware of that. And it is considered to large extent it is considered to handle real-world problems, and that is the reason up till now it has survived. And yes, we all know it will survive a bit more. So the object-oriented programming definitely has an edge over procedural programming. So this was about imperative programming approach. Then now we are coming near to the functional programming. We have another approach, we call it as declarative programming. Now, when it comes to again declarative, if you go across seeing various resources, you will find different types. But I will include two major types: the functional programming, and we have logical programming. It will be introduced. Like the way I said, when you scan the resources, you may find something called as mathematical programming, you may something called as data-driven approach. But like the way I said, we will focus only on functional programming and logical programming. So functional programming, well, the hero of the movie today, functional programming. These are few functional programming examples. We have Lisp, it is list processing. We have Scheme, we have Closure, we have Haskell, my favorite. I have done quite a bit of coding in Haskell, and then F#. Well, .NET somehow realizes, Microsoft somehow realizes that it has to give some credit to functional programming. So with C#, Microsoft has dedicated some amount of its resources to develop F#. It's functional programming. Example, F#. You may write an F# code, but again, they have not done enough for F#. So let's see, hope they will do something better in future. When it comes to functional programming, the roots go down very deep to lambda calculus. Now, lambda calculus, as we all know, it's like everything has to be written in form of function. What happens in functional programming is the desired result is declared as a value of series of function application. So we'll have series of function application, and mind you, there will be only one transaction at a time, only one function call to be exercised at a time. Here in functional programming, uh, like the way I said it, based on lambda calculus, which was introduced in 1930 by Alonzo's Church. We will discuss it again when we see functional programming in a detail. Well, in functional programming, the program are constructed by applying and composing functions. Well, the central model for the abstraction is the function. And the functions are meant for specific computation and not for data structure. Remember one thing, what we studied in object-oriented programming is like we have a data structure and then we have a function to work on data structure. Try to understand. What we studied in object-oriented is like we have a data structure and we have a function constructed to work on the data structure. Well, this is what actually made it very unsafe. What actually the ideal situation is, the data structures are different and functions are different. And this is what functional programming emphasizes on. The functional programming make use of expressions and not statements. An expression is evaluated to produce a value, whereas when we talk about a statement, it is executed to assign variable. So these are the differences in function, in expression and statement. We will see in detail the difference, but try to understand the functional programming roams around, or the code in functional programming. If you see a functional programming code, all you will see is function. Trust me, there will be hardly any assignment. It will be all be function call. Irony. The irony is, the Alan Turing, based on whose principle we have imperative programming, he was student of Alonzo Church. Who started with lambda calculus. So just imagine, the fundamentals, the concept of Alan Turing, gave rise to imperative programming, which has actually overshadowed the functional programming, last 4 or 5 decades. We can hardly see the presence or significance of functional programming in the last 4 or 5 decades. It was all, it was all built around the object-oriented concepts. Well, this is functional programming. We have logic programming. It can be, now, when I say logic programming, we have examples like Prolog, Datalog. Logic programming paradigm, it can be termed as an abstract model for computation. What here it is, here we have the desired result is declared as answer to the question about the system. So if I want, result, the result will be declared as an answer to the question about the system using some facts and some rules. It's like this, अगर मैं आपको कहना चाहूँ कि logical programming basically काम कैसे करेगा, it's like this कि let me define some logic. Just try to visualize. Let me define some logic to there is some logic grandparent. So I just have to write whether is X a parent of Y? Is X a grandparent of Y? Now, how can we say X is a grandparent of Y when X is parent of Z and Z is parent of Y? Try to visualize. We have to write a logic for determining whether X is a grandparent of Y. So we will write something like this. We will have grandparent XY, means X is a grandparent of Y when X is a parent of Z and Z is parent of Y. So when it comes to parent, we have to further decompose it. Whether it's a father or a child. So what we do is we have a knowledge base here. What we do here is we have a knowledge base known to us, and we will have few questions on the knowledge base, and which is given to the machine, which will produce the result. Now, this knowledge bases plays very important role in logical programming because this is not what we have studied up till now. The object-oriented programming domain, what we have studied up till now, we have never heard this word. Well, but very oftenly now, very lately, in fact, I should rather say, in machine learning models, we have person term models that uses this mechanism of knowledge base. So now when it comes to implementing machine learning concept, we do have perceptron models which are working in very close concept with the knowledge base. Now, what happens in logical programming is the execution of program is very much like the proof of mathematical statement. Now, just remember your 12th standard logic chapter. Everything was like in terms of proof. So this is how it works. When it comes to Prolog, it's a logic programming language associated with AI and computational linguistics. In Prolog, we have logic expressed in terms of relations, and it was developed by Alan Colmerens with Philippe Roussel in 1972 in France. Well, you can obviously go and read a lot about Prolog. It will be very interesting, trust me. And then we have Datalog, which is a kind of syntactically subset of Prolog, and it is often used in query language and deductive databases. Well, the Datalog has very prominent presence today, and it has used for data integration, information extraction, network, machine learning. So what we can see this is with functional programming, with logical programming, they are gaining importance and they are gaining more presence in today's scenario when it comes to solving the problem we are facing now. If you see the problem, the kind of development that is taking place, it is roaming around, built around data science, machine learning, and these languages have gained quite a significance in this time. Well, like the way I said, it was only a year ago that I was, infatuated to functional programming, and the credit goes to this person. He's Ilya Suzalnitsky. I hope I'm pronouncing him better. It was this article of his that was published in last July that has actually, infatuated me to functional programming. In fact, declarative programming paradigm, my idea for declarative or my knowledge for declarative programming paradigm, it started with this article, and I have spent quite a lot of time after that studying on declarative programming. Before reading this article, I am like, I was like millions of people across the globe loved and lived with object-oriented programming, considering it as the ultimate tools to solve the programming models. Now, I know. Listen here. I know this guy is young, and see, I'm not asking you to blindly, accept his recommendations, but or his views. But there is no harm in going through it once. See, if someone try to understand. If someone has to criticize me, he has to read me a lot. He has to study me a lot. See, if you have to criticize someone, you have to study him a lot. So I believe that if this person has criticized, and there are many more, in fact, I'll be telling you this. So I believe if this person has, and this is not the only article this person has written, he has written quite a lot of articles on object-oriented programming. He's right now working in Replicon. This is what he says. Till September 19, at the time when he was published this. Now, I believe since he has criticized a lot, so I believe he must have studied object-oriented better. Since we love, we don't go in much detail. This is what I believe. And this article, and there are many more highlighted. There are many more, articles I read that have highlighted few points that made me actually sit back and rethink all over again about OOP. I would recommend, whether you love or hate OOP, please read the article with unbiased mind. Please. Well, my presentation is influenced definitely by this article and forced me to read many other articles, and also made me to go through, a lot of literature and a lot of lecture series on functional programming. And with whatever I have learned from these various resources, I'm trying to put forward to you. I've done decent like the way I said, I've done decent amount of coding in Haskell, but it is considered as pure functional. But I will not be discussing at any particular language per se. I'll not be discussing any particular functional programming language per se. Rather, I'll be highlighting the core blocks of functional programming and the issues it addresses, and how it makes more how it makes programming more free of side effects, and how it facilitates the very important, all important refactoring. Now the developers across the globe, you must have heard this refactoring word. It is very important, and we'll be discussing refactoring in detail. Okay. 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 I thought you guys have some questions. Okay. So, like the way I said, I mean, it was only a year ago, and I was exposed to this harsh reality. I don't know it is reality or not. For me, it is reality. And then I go, I search many more articles, and there were few prominent people in the industry who have put forward their views about object-oriented programming. I thought it is worth sharing with you. I mean, these are few quotes from pioneers. We have Alan Kay, the developer of OOP. Then we have Linus Torvalds, the developer of Linux. Then we have Joe Armstrong, a prominent name in algorithms. And then we have Dijkstra's. Well, these people have these are pioneers in programming and algorithm. And there are many more. Trust me, there are many more. You just Google it, and there are many more people who are talking or criticizing, I should rather say, object oriented. In fact, I never knew there are people who have such issues with OP, frankly speaking. But then they are coming from prominent names, so I thought it is worth going through it. So that was the basic idea. If there are people of this stature who are talking about it, I mean, we should definitely consider it. Okay, fine. चलो ओपी ये जैसे मैंने कहा आई मीन प्रोग्रामर्स का पहला प्यार आप बोलोगे सर पहला प्यार तो सी हो सकता है नहीं 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 सी से प्यार नहीं किया कभी आपने मुझे मालूम है ना क्योंकि सी ने आपको वो दिया ही नहीं जो ओपी ने दिया है सी यू नो इट ऑलवेज हैव बाइंडेड यू सी ने आपको वो फ्रीडम नहीं दिया जो ओपी ने दिया और इसीलिए सी couldn't reach to that height. Obviously when it comes to writing code which are nearer to the machine we have C. Correct, I agree, but then the kind of freedom, the kind of importance, the kind of armor, the kind of tools that OP has given to you, I mean, so yes, it will deserve some like these are I mean these are not my views, these are views of the Ilya, but yeah, I will I will accept these views. OP is considered by many to be a crown jewel of computer science. Yes, I agree to this. It's an ultimate solution to code organization. Yes, people across the globe do agree. It is the ultimate solution to end all our problems and the only true way to write the program. यहाँ से थोड़ा सा गड़बड़ हो गया. But people actually have started believing that there will be no alternative to OP over the period of time. In fact, I mean, since last 2 decades, and this is what people have experienced. So people started believing that OP is something which is bestowed upon us by the Almighty Himself. So this is what people have started talking about OP. Well. Complications. So with if people have praised OP, definitely there are people who have worked a lot. See, frankly speaking, you will not relate yourself to the complication unless and until you have worked enough complicated code on OOP. So otherwise, people will find it very difficult to accept. Now, the Alan Kay, according to Alan Kay, Alan Kay basically talks about 2 programming languages. I mean, Alan Kay is, the inventor of OOP. And you know what Alan Kay says? Well, I invented OOP only to ensure there are messages passed. I wanted 2 objects to interact with each other without mutating them. You know what? This is where the OOP started. The Alan Kay, the main intention was to, build something, build interactive objects so that the message is passed without changing other object, without changing the state of other object. This was basic intention. But you know what Alan Kay says? This is what he says. He said that Smalltalk and Erlang are the only one who are actually using the OOP it was. So, what he believed, that objects were only meant for messaging and the state of object was never meant to be shared actually. Yes, and this is what encapsulation stands for. The only definition of encapsulation basically adheres to this ideology that the state of the object should be secured, the state of the object should not be changed. Now, in Erlang, what it does is the object communicate with each other by passing immutable objects. Yes, this is what happens in Erlang. The object communicate without changing themselves, without allowing one object to change other. And you know what? You can Google it. I don't know whether you have heard much about Erlang, but you can Google it. It is found to be most reliable and powerful OP, and which actually powers IoT, blockchain, fintech, and most of the world telecom. Yes, even internet infrastructure. Yes. So, I mean, what Alan Kay says, if you're using OP in its right spirit, in its right sense, it will serve its purpose. What we have done is we have mutated OOP for our purpose. OP was initially intended to ensure simplicity only, but once the complexity of the program increases, it started encouraging people of sharing the haphazard, indiscriminately mutable state of the object. So it all started with creating numerous design pattern, as we all know. In OP, you can always understand that design pattern are basically the elements of creating reusable objects. Sorry. So it was like design pattern was basically elements of reusable object-oriented software component. Design pattern was like independent strategies to solve common problem, and they will act as a code base of experienced reusable software over which the more complex design can be made. Now, when it all started, like building more complex design on code base, there the real problem started. So with this numerous design pattern, it actually becomes difficult to implement. Now, but over the period of time, like the way I said, design pattern becomes complicated, and the basic build and the basic block from where it all started, people have somehow forgotten that original code. So आज के डेट में ओपी का हाल कैसा है कि हमने शुरू बहुत छोटे से कोड से किया था, and it was all working very fine. The kind of relationship, the kind of exchange between the object was too manageable, and then we started using inheritance, abstraction, and to the level we have built a very complex system where the original block is forgotten now. And this is the reason what we say the OP becomes problem when code base becomes big enough. In OP we call this code base as legacy code base. We call it as legacy code base, and the development team has to rewrite it over the period of time. This is how it goes. But how this आपके मन में क्वेश्चन आएगा, सर ये जो आप बोल रहे हो कोड बेस अगर आप खुद को समझाओ तो एक ओरिजिनल कोड और ओरिजिनल बेस है जहां से आप डेवलपमेंट आपका चालू हुआ. द कोड बेस बिकम्स, आप सोचो सर ये कॉम्प्लेक्स कैसे हो सकता है. फिर मैं कहता हूं कि ऑब्जेक्ट ओरिएंटेड पर से में कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है. सो इफ वी हैव ऑब्जेक्ट एंड इफ द ऑब्जेक्ट इज आइसोलेटेड, देयर इज नो प्रॉब्लम एट ऑल. सी, even the object are mutable, even the object state changes, but if it is isolated, अब जैसे मुझे अगर मोनालिसा पेंटिंग बनाना है, कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है, मैं ही अकेला हूं, मुझे बनाना है. बट अगर मैंने 10 लोग को बुला लिया और बोला मोनालिसा पेंटिंग बनाना है, प्रॉब्लम हो जाएगा. So even though if it is mutable, if it is isolated, there is no problem. But what happens with object oriented is over the period of time it becomes it becomes shared, and so the problem started. OP is juggling with many balls. Working with OP is like juggling with many balls at a time, and with the sole purpose. I mean, why do we create method in OP? It's just to mutate object. That's the whole purpose. I mean, why do we create methods in a class? I mean, the whole purpose is to mutate the object. So what we have is every object will have own state. And while building the application, as a developer, you need to always go and check back. You need to always go and check back the state of the object you are currently working. So, like the way I said, shared state is a problem. Well, आप बोलोगे सर ये कैसा है? Yes, trust me, it is not natural to us. Our brain is never centered around doing things like, organizing hierarchy of abstract object. I mean, we are not actually meant for it. We are actually created, we human beings are actually created to do things and not to organize the hierarchy of abstract objects. So we will go for a walk, we will eat, talk. I mean, so the OP is not natural to us. We have to somehow enforce us to write OP code. Well, it is not deterministic. I mean, we might get different output for the same, same input. And yes, because you know what? Let's say let's say I've inherited something. I've inherited something, and I've not made any changes in my program. I've inherited something. I've inherited some class. I've inherited the method, and I've not made any changes in my program. But eventually, when I run it again, I may get different output. But you may argue, अरे सर हमने तो कोई change नहीं किया. अरे आपने change नहीं किया. आपने जहां से inherit हुआ वहां change हो गया तो. So I mean, it is not deterministic. Concurrency. Well, the people who worked in Java, multi-threading concept, you might relate it with it. In multi-threading, when you have multiple threads to be sharing the common resource, it gives rise to race condition. So what we do is, now there is problem. आप बोलोगे सर problem है, but हमने solve कर लिया. We ensured synchronization by using synchronized method, and then we. But then, बेटा ये मैंने क्या कहा कि you are enforcing it. But I mean, this synchronization can have a side effects like deadlock, debugging problem. So I mean, even though when we say we have overcome these problems, these are nothing but small hacks. These are nothing but small hacks. Eventually, it will give rise to problem. Now, it will definitely give rise to problem. Now, अब आप बोलोगे, ए भाई, तो बोलोगे सर आप बोलो म्यूटेट करना है ना. म्यूटेट करना मतलब एक सिंपल बताता हूँ. I have passed some object. Now object is passed to the function by reference, so the function can mutate the object. आप बोलोगे प्रॉब्लम क्या है? यही तो हम चाहते हैं. नहीं, हम ये नहीं चाहते हैं, कभी भी नहीं चाहते. हम चाहते हैं कि म्यूटेट हो ही ना, हम चाहते हैं कि स्टेट चेंज हो ही ना, हम चाहते हैं कि स्टेट शेयर हो ना. बट आप बोलोगे कि म्यूटेबली इनहेरेंट थोड़ी है, मतलब आपको इनहेरिटेंस करना है तो म्यूटेट करना है तो करो, नहीं तो मत करो. गलत बात. ओपी में म्यूटेबिलिटी इज इनहेरेंट. You know what people normally think, that it's design choice of me to include mutable state or not. But no. Actually, in OP, when we pass object, see, we should, recalibrate it like this. Why do we pass object? And see, what Alan Kay says, object should be used as a pure medium of passing messages. But what actually we do by passing object? I mean, when I pass object, my intention is to change the object. I mean, my intention is to change the value. My intention is to perform certain operation. So when I say mutability is inherent, it means per se I want this to be done. This is what my intention is. So you cannot say it is your design, design choice. So it's like, see, then someone will say. Okay, someone will say कि you can pass immutable object. Who has stopped you? तुमको किसने रोका है? Immutable object पास करो. अरे बच्चा, अगर मैं immutable object पास करना चालू कर जाऊंगा जिसमें reference attach नहीं होगा ना, trust me, the mainstream OP will have no meaning only. This is what I have, studied and concluded from last 1 year preparation. And the most important, refactoring. What is refactoring? It is the most important job that developers do in today's life. You know what? It means refactoring. Matlab kya? I have built certain piece of code and my system is ready. My system is working. Now, over the period of time, the requirement of my system may change. My system has to evolve. Now, what happens in this evolving is we do not rebuild a system from the scratch. What we do is we keep the things we need, and then we make changes in the things that we feel needs to be updated or upgraded. So refactoring basically means holding on the things you know about programming and refactor the ideas on how to do programs. You know what it does? It helps us in removing the old package, It basically the core idea is to reduce the complexity of the code and makes it more maintainable. Now, when I say my system is evolving, I'm refactoring it. What actually I'm doing is I'm actually maintaining my code. So what refactoring actually makes, actually is difficult in OP. Yes, OP makes refactoring difficult, especially with complex connections of design pattern involved in it. So these are some, I know complications are harsh word. It is complication is harsh word, I know. But then this is my personal opinion. Now, when it comes to, so this is last about OP pillars we'll be talking about. From now onwards, after this slide, I'll be taking you to functional. I know you are waiting for it. But like the way I said, before I make you love the functional programming, I have to tell you why you should hate OP. Because unless and until you stop loving one, you cannot love other. I mean, it goes like this. So when it comes to pillars of OP, this is all we have heard. It all the mighty inheritance, polymorphism, encapsulation, and abstraction. Now let us analyze their performance in complex environment of object-oriented programming. The first is inheritance. Now, what is the intention of inheritance? The intention of inheritance is code reusability. ये अब सबको मालूम है. मतलब एक क्लास दूसरे क्लास को इनहेरिट करेगा. इजी ना? नो. ना जब मैं दूसरे क्लास को इनहेरिट करूंगा मुझे पहले क्लास का सब कुछ चाहिए क्या? नहीं. बट वो सब कुछ आ जाएगा. अरे उसी क्लास का सब कुछ नहीं आएगा. उसके भी फादर क्लास का सब कुछ आ जाएगा. So basically, it brings a lot of classes code in your program that actually not needed by you. You're not only inheriting the details, the properties of your parent class, but you're also inheriting the parents also. I mean, why do we need it? In OP, it's nothing like real world inheritance. अब बोलोगे कि रियल वर्ड इनहेरिटेंस जैसा है क्या? आप बोलोगे ये रियल वर्ड को मैनेज करता है. कोई रियल वर्ड इनहेरिटेंस जैसा नहीं है. Now, when I say real world inheritance, it simply means that can your parent control you? No. See, they have tried a lot, but you never allowed them. And now, can you modify the feature of your parent? No, even you tried a lot, they have not allowed. So, I mean, it's rather vague to say that inheritance in OP it's actually modeling real life scenario. In fact, you know what? It is an inferior way to code reusability. And eventually, if you study a lot, you will understand that instance of inheritance, composition makes it better. Yes. So we will understand it in due course. Having parent of, just try to understand, there is some parent class which is declared somewhere else. It makes your code to reason out very difficult. Even in inheritance, it has its own shortcomings with languages like Java, C# not supporting multiple inheritance. So like the way I said, if you ask me the downside of inheritance, it's like one fine day I will see my program and the performance of my program changed. It because not something what I have did, it because something what happened to my parent. I have no control over it. So that's scary actually. So when it comes to next pillar, polymorphism, polymorphism, okay, fine. It intends to change the behavior at runtime. Now, polymorphism, people define it like many forms. No, sorry, dear. When you say many forms, that's not the real meaning of polymorphism. When I say polymorphism, see, try to understand. Whenever I have many form, it will create confusion. Whenever I have many form of something, it will create confusion. So the confusion needs to be resolved. You know what? The polymorphism actually makes my original code base significantly more complex. Polymorphism, can also be implemented without OP. Now, who says that polymorphism के लिए inheritance OP चाहिए? नहीं, interface. Interface is one better way. I mean, interface will have you access all the features without the baggage of OP. So, this is about polymorphism. Now we have encapsulation. Well, encapsulation, It appears to be the most prominent advantage of OP. So what encapsulation? The wrapping of data and function together in a class. So basically, it meant to save. It meant to protect the members. It meant to protect the object from outside. And like the way say, it is encapsulated. And encapsulation creates this beautiful world with no global variables. So we think that encapsulation is safe for our variable. But there is a catch. Yes, there is a catch. You know what? For efficiency, what we do, the objects are passed by function, by reference, and not by value. The objects are always passed by reference in OP and not by value. So here now we have a constructor that can put an object reference in some, private variables. It is not safe that constructor is somewhere else. It is not safe that some other piece of code has pointer to the object. I mean, this is scary again, and this is what it will create. I mean, this will mutate my object. So the constructor, so if I need to avoid this, the constructor has to create a clone of the past object, and that too deep clone, means for every member of the past object, it has to create a clone. Well, and all these efforts just for efficiency, not worth. So this is, I mean, I'm talking about the third pillar, encapsulation. And finally, we have abstraction. Abstraction ideology is to hide the complexity. Abstraction ideology is to hide the complexity. All it says, you import something, you use something, and the detailing about the operation is abstracted for you. Tum aam khao, ped mat gino. This is what abstraction says. Okay? So, well, the abstraction actually intend to allow developers to reason about code base without thinking about the hidden complexity. हमको कैसे हो रहा है मत बताओ, हमारा काम होना चाहिए. Well, according to me, ये बहुत fancy नाम दे दिया abstraction. I mean, we can always hide the implementation of function. I mean, so I mean, frankly speaking, I'll not give it a very much short to it when it comes to abstraction. Well. This diagram, I've taken it from internet, obviously, but I loved this. You know what OP user claims, and what actually it happens. There is yes, this is OP which eventually becomes messy. This is all summary of what I have stayed up till now. This actually, इतना बोल के मैं खाली ये diagram भी दिखा देता था तो भी काफी था. It all started with small defined set of object with limited set of relationship, shared object not frequently and freely mutated. But then with the time requirement changes, refactoring happens, new features to be added, more reusability, inheritance, overriding. With time, we reach to a place where the image of actual system is blurred. And we have written obscene number of hacks just to somehow make my system work. जैसे मैंने कहा ना कि आप क्या करते हो कि जैसे मैंने कहा कि अगर शेयर्ड रिसोर्सेज में प्रॉब्लम हो रहा है मल्टी थ्रेडिंग में तो सिंक्रोनाइज कर दो. ठीक है. I mean, these are nothing but hacks, and I mean, you cannot survive for long on hacks. So this was, I mean, I hope I have given you enough evidence for you to start somehow disliking. Okay, if not hating, my dear, start disliking. But then I should eventually give you enough number of reasons to start loving the functional programming. Like the way I said, I'm not going to take any code syntax. I'm not going to take example of any functional programming language per se. I mean, be it Scheme, be it Lisp, be it Haskell. I've done quite amount of code on Haskell, but then I'll be trying to briefing you out about things work. So functional programming. Yes, here we are with functional programming after almost 1 hour. So I mean, I guess people are waiting for this slide. Well, the functional programming, it uses lambda calculus developed by Alonzo Church in 1930. And like the way I said, I mean, functional programming was overshadowed by imperative programming in all these decades. I mean, frankly speaking, this is 20 years here and 1930, almost a century. It is in last 5 to 10 years that functional programming has gained a lot of importance. Ironically, मैंने कहा ना, ironically, he was teacher of Alan Turing, whose Turing model became base for imperative programming paradigm, and it actually dominated the programming world for nearly a century. So it was the student work that has overshadowed the teacher's work. When it comes to functional programming, it all depends on function. Now, when I ask, I mean, when I'm talking about function, I'm going for the mathematical relationship. If I define it like this, a function is relation for which each value from set of first component. Here we have set of first component, and each value of the ordered pair is associated with exactly one value here. Okay, so 1 is associated with only C. 3 and 1 can associate with C, but 1 is not associated with more than one of output. So it's like this. In function, we have fixed input, we have fixed output. And function, don't depend on environment. Function has nothing to do with the system. Function has nothing to do with the environment. It says, मुझे तुम input दोगे, मैं ये output दूंगा. So, like the way I said, it is relation for which each value from set of first component of ordered pair is associated with exactly one value from set of second component of ordered pair. Like the way I said, we try to bind everything. So if you ask me what is functional programming, I'll try to express everything in terms of functions. Yes. It focuses on what to solve and not how to solve. Yes, and based on lambda calculus. So this was just an introduction of functional programming. Now there might be some student बोलेंगे कहाँ यूज हो रहा है बताओ उनको functional programming use कहाँ हो रहा है sir? Who uses functional programming? Well, we have ThoughtWorks. It's a very prominent software firm. It uses a lot of Scala, and yes, it uses some bit of Clojure also. Scala and Clojure are functional programming languages. And well, we have LinkedIn. They use Scala and JRuby, and they very proudly announce this. We have Twitter. Yes, Twitter uses Scala. In fact, Twitter has a Scala School free course. You can just Google Scala School. It's a free course that started with Scala, and Twitter have used Scala to build a collection of library and made the current development more streamlined for them. This is what engineers at Twitter has done. Yes, Facebook uses Haskell for fake news detection, and they also uses Clojure. Netflix uses Scala. So here we have Netflix uses Scala for search algorithm and recommendation. You can always Google a talk show called as Scala for Netflix. Up Google कीजिए Scala for Netflix, and there you will find a significant amount. It is a video, proper video, which talks about how Scala have been used in various firms, or Scala be used in various firms, and to improve the performance, and many more. So these are, some prominent organization uses Scala, and there are, functional programming, and trust me, there are many more, and day by day this count is increasing. Trust me, because the overall scenario for development has changed. Now there is almost every firm working on data science. Now, this is again very important. Like the way I said, what was the most prominent difference between OOP and functional is in imperative we write program in terms of statements, and in functional we'll try to write it in expressions. See, what is expression does? Expression performs some action. So it's like print, sleep, return, if this, exit, throw some error. So these are some examples of statements. And when it comes to expression evaluates something and returns, and it returns some value. It's like hello world. So you don't have to command like print hello world. It's hello world 1000. It can be any expression 5 plus 3. It's like a into 5 greater than p. It's like AND operation of flag and mask. So if you try to summarize it in a nutshell, we can say that in programming language, the expression is combination of values, and functions that are combined and interpreted by compiler to create new values. So expression, what we'll have functions. See, one example I can give of expression is like, I hope you can recall conditional statement. So if I say, see, just try to visualize. I want to find largest of two numbers. So I'll say if A greater than B, if A greater than B, print A, else print B. Correct? So this is more of imperative approach. Now, if I simply use a conditional operator like A greater than B question mark A colon B. So now that's kind of expression I'm talking about. So don't you think so? It is kind that conditional operator. You know what? After I learned about functional programming, that was the first thing that struck to my mind. Oh my God, that conditional operator there, which I studied in C, which I studied in C++, Java, it was somehow behaving like an expression. Yes, it was an expression. So if you want to visualize a functional programming, you can visualize something like this. The conditional operator that we use was an example of functional programming where it was anonymous function that used to take A and B and return the max of A and B. So you know what we can say, like a statement is just standalone unit of execution and does not return anything. This is what a statement does. It's a unit of execution which is standalone. So we can say it like the purpose of expression is to create value, whereas the purpose of statement is to have side effect. Now, people will say like, why side effect? Because it is going to perform operation, and with operation comes mutability. And when you mutate something, it will have to have a side effect. So this was about a kind of brief. Yes, Moibuddin, you are very correct, beta. Moibuddin, you are very correct. JavaScript is functional programming, dear. So yes, you are correct. No. Divyang Soni says the difference between Java and Scala is similar to the difference between C and C++. Sorry, beta. C and C++ both are imperative. So in both C and C++, we tend to write program in terms of statements. Whereas Java is object-oriented, which is again imperative. Scala is functional. So Moibuddin, you are correct, beta. And JSON, yes, JSON handling, perfect. JSON, you know what? JSON is very important when it comes to handling data today, because it is unstructured data, no SQL. So, I mean, if you have this fascination, you can also go and see about MongoDB. I mean, it handles basically JSON files, but yes, JSON can be used. Okay, so I'll come back to it. Okay, so how to go about it? Now, how to go about it का मतलब क्या है? सर मेरे पास अभी मैंने ओपी सीखा है, मेरे पास एक प्रोग्राम है, मैंने ओपी सीखा है, मुझे उसको फंक्शनल की तरफ लेके जाना है, मैं एक अप्रोच के बारे में बात करूंगा. फाइन. सो सबसे पहले क्या है? सी, इट्स लाइक दिस. हाउ डू वी मूव टुवर्ड फंक्शनल प्रोग्रामिंग? when I say how to go about it, my question is, how do I move toward functional programming? How do we reorganize what we knew in OP to new paradigm? सर मैंने कुछ सीखा अब तक बचपन से हमको सिखाया है इंपेरेटिव में या ओपी, तो जो भी मैंने सीखा है, अब मैं जो भी मेरे पास है, जो भी मेरा नॉलेज है, उसको मैं एक नए पैराडाइम के साथ कैसे मर्ज करूंगा, एक नए पैराडाइम के साथ कैसे उसको मिक्स करूंगा. You know what? This is goes. सबसे पहले recollect what you know about programming. So first we will recollect what we know about like working module into pieces. Like हमें पता है जैसे refactoring is basically reorganizing the files into new paradigm. So when I say refactoring, it is one such mechanism where you'll be using the existing knowledge and you'll be shifting your overall code to a new paradigm that will suit the new paradigm. You know what? First, I will try to recollect what I know about programming. So, जब मैं प्रोग्राम के बारे में बात करता हूँ मेरे ओपी में, so I know identifiers, assignment, hashes, arrays, loop, procedures, data type, namespaces, string, indentations. Yes, Pascal वाले array. I mean indentations. not necessarily space. I mean, basically ideology is to decide the scope, array, class, inheritance, methods. You know what? We will first try to recollect what we know about programming, and then step 2, let's keep things that works for us. अब हम ऐसी चीजें ढूंढेंगे जो फंक्शनल प्रोग्रामिंग में हमारा काम करेंगे, लाइक आइडेंटिफायर्स, नेम स्पेसेस, स्ट्रिंग्स, array, इंडेंटेशन, आइटरेशंस. मैं आप देखेंगे मैंने काफी चीजें निकाल दी हैं. तो अब मेरे पास वी कैन आल्सो यूज हैश, मैप्स, हम वो चीजें भी रख सकते हैं. I mean, this is in a broad. I'm trying to, make you visualize how you can move on. So first we have identified. पहले हमने recollect किया हमको क्या क्या आता है, and then we try to identify the things that will work. And now we will keep these things that we know. जैसे मैंने कहा ना, हम identifiers रखेंगे, namespaces रख लेंगे, strings रख लेंगे, array रख लेंगे, iterations रख लेंगे. Now we will go back to someone जिनका जॉब लेस फैंसी है. किसके पास जाएंगे हम? अब हम मैथमेटिशियन के पास जाएंगे. अब हम बोलेंगे मैथमेटिशियंस को, बोलेंगे भाई हमको तुमसे कुछ उधार लेना है, हमको कुछ तुमसे कुछ बोरो करना है. मतलब सर, see, we have something that we will need in our functional programming, so we will need these things in our functional programming. But now we want to pull out certain rules. We want to pull in special rules. When it comes to, I mean, if you try to visualize functions, they are nothing but rules. So if you go ahead and study lambda calculus, you have certain rules of lambda calculus. And we have reduction also. We have alpha reduction, we have beta reduction, and we have eta reductions in lambda calculus. And those reductions definitely are taken into consideration when I'm building a programming model based on functional programming. So because every functional programming model is based on lambda calculus. So you know what we will do? We have kept things that we love, that we have, and now we will borrow something from mathematicians. In maths, what we have a function in relation from input set to output set. Function क्या कहता है? Function ना बहुत simple है, वो complicate करता ही नहीं चीजों को. Here are input, here are output. You know, but we as a programmer, we have different vision altogether about function. Okay, is it necessary to know OOP without learning functional? नहीं बेटा, in fact नहीं आता है ना OOP तो ज्यादा अच्छा है. You know what? Something जैसा मैंने कहा कि hope functional programming is your first love, so you love it more. Okay. Okay, thank you, Gravit. We will also love to have some more sessions. Okay, fine. So we'll come back to this. तो अभी तो हमारा काम आधा हुआ है भाई. हमने क्या किया? हमको जो भी काम का है वो हमने रख लिया है. अब हमको कुछ स्पेशल रूल देने तो हम मैथमेटिशियंस के बाद जाएंगे, बिकॉज हमें फंक्शन इंप्लीमेंट करना है. फंक्शन का मतलब क्या है? फंक्शनल का खेल क्या है? हमें कुछ इनपुट के लिए आउटपुट मैप करना है. आपने वो डायग्राम में देखा, हर इनपुट एक आउटपुट को मैप करेगा. You know what? But the problem comes here. The mathematician's idea of function is different than our idea. हमारे लिए फंक्शन क्या है? हमारे लिए फंक्शन है ऑब्जेक्ट पे काम करने का है, एरे पे काम करने का है. हमारे लिए फंक्शन का मतलब सब चेंज करना है, जो वेरिएबल को म्यूटेट करे, ऑब्जेक्ट को म्यूटेट करे. You know, what is the basic idea of we as an OOP developer trying to create a method? It's like our methods are nothing but code. They are mechanism. They can read file, they can delete a file, they can update database, change input, and can return anything. मैथमेटिशियन का फंक्शन ऐसा नहीं होता. मैथमेटिशियन से पूछोगे तो उनके फंक्शन सेम रहते हैं. फॉर गिवन इनपुट इट विल गिव सेम आउटपुट. दे डोंट चेंज ओवर टाइम. Oh, temporal limitation is overcome with functional programming. And object-oriented programming, yes, it has this temporal limitations. Mathematical function एक चीज है. It is a thing. Try to understand. When I'm talking about mathematical function, it is a thing. ये एक चीज है. And we need to use these things. हमें वो चीजें यूज करनी है. So अब हम क्या करेंगे? अब हम कुछ अपने rules add करेंगे. We will have bunch of rules. So we have this f of x applied to whatever we have recollected. We will have some bunch of rules on our function that can make it look like their function. हम क्या करेंगे? जो मैथ्स के फंक्शन है उसमें कुछ रूल्स डालेंगे. और हमारे पास हम क्या करेंगे? हम कुछ रूल्स डालेंगे हमारे लॉजिक में, और we will try to map our function with the functions defined by mathematicians. Now, क्या rule होगा? Sir, what kind of rule you're talking about? The rule is to look into the input parameters and produce the output. हमारा rule एक ही काम करेगा. See, try to understand functional programming. Simple basic rule: function input, function output. So, there may be student who might argue, sir, if there are many functions, yes, we can have functions within functions, but only one function will execute at a time. Only one function. You know what? Functional programming is lazy. और ये उसका attribute है. It is very important feature. It is very important property that adds a lot of features to it. And we will understand how. You know what? Functions don't change anything. And why we have added these functions, why we have added this rule, and we are doing only to make our program easy to work and understand. Now, let's see something. I hope this is visible to you. So what is this impure function? Now, when it comes to function, we have two types. Yes, unfortunately, we have two types. We have something called as pure and impure. Now, if you look at this function which is there, we have a string passed to it. The function impure takes an argument string. Yes, obviously it is taken from some resource from Google, and I'm using it to explain it to you. What we are doing is, I'm just trying to make you understand what impure function is actually. So there is some function which takes a string, and what we did, we have str equal to str plus hello. So we have changed the string. The string get appended a value. A string is then printed and returned. The state of the input argument string passed to the function is changed during the execution of the function. और ऐसे function को हम कहते हैं pure function. Now we have something called as pure function. Now what is the disadvantage of impure function is it can generate side effect, because since it is changing the state of arguments, we can have mutable object as argument, and the function may tend to change the state of the object. So we will not like to recommend this kind of function to us when it comes to functional programming. On the contrary, we have a pure function defined as pure, named as pure. We passed an argument. See, I have not made any changes to the string. It is str plus hello. So basically, my str is not going to change. Whatever I have passed. So if it is Sanjeev passed my name, my str remains the same. It is something like this. If I'm writing int x equal to 10 and I'm writing y equal to x plus 2. So y becomes 12, but x remains 10. This is what is happening here. In pure function, what it does, it simply appends a text to the value of the string and returns the result. You know what here happens? Here the state of the input argument is not changed in function execution. In function programming, the expectation is, what kind of expectation we have? Thank you, Harshu. Thank you, Parth. In functional programming, the expectation is when object is passed to the function, we expect it not to modify the state of the object. Yes. In pure function can be compared. Yes. And one more thing, we can have, composition of many pure functions to create a complex function. Yes, we can have. Just try to figure it out and try to make yourself understand the difference between pure and impure. Something that does not change the state of the input parameter is pure. Something that changes is impure. So when it comes to pure function, see, this pure function plays very important role in functional programming. So I'm emphasizing on it. What it does, for a valid input, there is one and only one valid output. Now, when I say valid, you know what? I'm not talking in terms of business validity. I'm talking about validity in terms of type. The pure function will work only on the variables they are passed to it. In fact, it will not try to have any statement of variable. In pure function, you will not find statement of variable. You will only have expressions of variable. So wherein you will not going to change the value of the variable. All you're going to have is expression returning some result. When I say valid, I'm trying to say that a cosine function will always return -1 for pi. Irrespective. You call it any number of times. So if I'm trying to generalize something, I can say a general function that does not have any side effect are eligible to call as pure function. Any general function that does not have any side effect are eligible enough to call themselves as pure function. Advantages of pure function. I hope I'm not boring you, but there are still interesting things coming for you. Now, when it comes to advantages of pure function, consistent result. I mean, as functions are pure and determined output, so it is capable of generating consistent result independent of the environment. So this is the best thing. It is not machine dependent. So if I'm talking about functional programming, the performance and the result will not be dependent on the existing infrastructure, existing architecture of the machine. It will be independent of the machine. Well, for pure functions supports easy parallelization. Like the way I said, in threads, there were problem when working with shared variable. So you know what? In like the way I said, we came up with patches like synchronization, wait, notify, which again actually increase the complexity. So in function programming, we do not work on shared states for parallelization. So the parallelization becomes simple. All objects are independent, immutable, easy parallelization. I mean, easy to go. Now, memoization and caching. This is interesting. Let's try to understand. If I'm writing a program to find factorial of a number, okay. So just try to understand. If I want factorial of a 4, I need to know the factorial of 3. So if factorial of 3 is calculated somewhere, I don't have to recalculate. I just have to multiply it with 4 and my result. So what happens in memoization is, yes, functional programming, like the way I said, it is function, and we have recursion here. In recursion, the function can return, if it can be used when my function returns the same value. So we can always have this result of fact3 to be cached and memorize the value so that it can be used in next call. Laziness. आप बोलोगे laziness कैसे हो सकता है? अच्छी बात. Yes, it is. It is in fact the hallmark of functional programming. Laziness कहता क्या है? मेरा प्रोग्राम क्या है? मेरा प्रोग्राम है सीरीज ऑफ एक्सप्रेशंस. तो ये क्या कहता है? मैं सारे एक्सप्रेशन को एक साथ इवैल्यूएट नहीं करूंगा. लेजी का मतलब लेट. Now when I say lazy, I'm talking about late. तो ये क्या कहता है? The programs, since in functional programming are written as expression, उनके evaluation मैं पहले से नहीं करूंगा. The evaluation of expression and variable is delayed. जब उसको invoke किया जाएगा, जब वो expression को solve किया जाएगा, तब वो execute किया जाएगा. इसका एक फायदा क्या है? इसका एक फायदा है कि it will help us to decide at run time कि क्या cache करना है. ठीक है? You know what? This laziness is feature definitely, and basically ये क्या करता है? आपके जितने भी evaluation है वो runtime कर देता है. And then we have referential transparency. Now, what is referential transparency? It's like this. If I'm having two functions returning same value for the same input, if I'm having two functions returning same value for the same input, I can replace one with other. We call it as referential transparency. You know what it says? You know what? It is a tool. Referential transparency is a tool to gauge the purity of the function. The only thing that is important in the function or expression is value. हमको value से मतलब है. तो अगर मेरे पास दो फंक्शन है, ये इनपुट दिया, ये आउटपुट, ये रिजल्ट आएगा, तो मेरे को फर्क नहीं पड़ता आप कौन सा यूज कर रहे हो. So if another expression gives same value, it can be used. You know what? In program we have lot of function. हमारे जब हम normal functional programming की बात करेंगे, we will have lot of functions. Oh, okay. And तो हम वहां पे referential transparency का इस्तेमाल करके substitution कर सकते हैं. So अगर आप प्योर फंक्शन को इधर नक्सल समराइज करने की कोशिश करेंगे, तो ये वो फंक्शन है जो हमें कंसिस्टेंट रिजल्ट देता है. हमारे ऑब्जेक्ट म्यूटेबल नहीं है, शेयर्ड नहीं है, इसलिए पैरेललाइजेशन में आसानी होती है. अगर रिकर्शन में फंक्शन सिमिलर वैल्यूज रिटर्न कर रहे हैं, हम उनको सेव कर सकते हैं, मेमोराइज कर सकते हैं और नेक्स्ट टाइम यूज कर सकते हैं. आप इसको ऐसे समराइज कीजिए कि भाई मेरे फंक्शनल प्रोग्रामिंग में क्या है, हमारे पास बहुत सारे एक्सप्रेशंस हैं. तो अगर बहुत सारे एक्सप्रेशंस हैं तो उनका रिजल्ट तो हमें रन टाइम ही चाहिए. उसको लेजी इवैल्यूएशन करेंगे। और अगर मेरे पास एक से ज्यादा फंक्शन है जो सेम वैल्यू रिटर्न करता है, आई कैन ऑलवेज सब्स्टिट्यूट वन विथ अदर। दिस इज व्हाट अबाउट प्योर फंक्शन। Now, very important aspect, immutable data structure. We are very near, huh? We are very near. I hope I'm keeping you interested and I'm making it worth attending. I hope so. Now, this is very important aspect क्योंकि अब तक अगर आपने बात नोटिस किया होगा, मैंने आपसे क्या कहा था, in object oriented programming, what do we have? We have a function, we have a data structure, but the basic idea of building the function is to manipulate my data structure. Well, that where we failed actually to some extent. Now, in imperative programming, what is the basic idea? The basic idea is to use mutable object with data structure. ये imperative programming का ideology था. Now, like the way again, I like to revise. Imperative programming का idea क्या था? Mutable object हो और मेरे पास function हो जो उस mutable object पे काम करेगा. भाई हमारा आइडिया यही था। लेकिन एक बात समझो, अगर मैं चाहता हूं कि मेरे डेटा स्ट्रक्चर इफेक्टिवली यूज हो फंक्शनल प्रोग्रामिंग में, डोंट यू थिंक सो? when I am discussing a lot of things, when I'm talking about immutability concept, even my data structure needs to be immutable. Yes, my data structure needs to be immutable. Now, functional programming avoids this side effect. ठीक है, इंपेरेटिव प्रोग्रामिंग जैसे मैंने कहा डेटा स्ट्रक्चर और म्यूटेबल होते थे और फंक्शन यूज किया जाता था। आई ट्राई टू रिवाइज द थिंग। अगर फंक्शनल प्रोग्रामिंग चाहता है, सी ट्राई टू अंडरस्टैंड, अगर फंक्शनल प्रोग्रामिंग चाहता है कि मैं इफेक्टिवली डेटा स्ट्रक्चर को यूज कर सकूं, तो उसको क्या करना पड़ेगा? उसको इम्यूटेबल डेटा स्ट्रक्चर्स बनाने पड़ेंगे। दैट्स द रैडिकल सॉल्यूशन। सो व्हाट इज द रैडिकल सॉल्यूशन दैट इज प्रपोज्ड इन फंक्शनल प्रोग्रामिंग? इज द रैडिकल सॉल्यूशन इज डेटा स्ट्रक्चर को इम्यूटेबल कर दो। आप बोलोगे सर कितना आसान है बोलना ना बेटा। अगर डेटा स्ट्रक्चर इम्यूटेबल हो गया, जैसे जस्ट ट्राई टू इमेजिन समथिंग, आई हैव एन array of 10 एलिमेंट A B C D E F, ओके 1 A B C D E F G H I J K व्हाटएवर, और मेरे को थर्ड एलिमेंट को मॉडिफाई करना है, बट मैं डेटा स्ट्रक्चर इम्यूटेबल, क्या करेंगे? कॉपी करना पड़ेगा, फिर चेंज करना पड़ेगा। तो अगर मैंने मेरे डेटा स्ट्रक्चर को इम्यूटेबल कर दिया, तो आपको नहीं लगता इफ वी डिजायर टू मेक चेंजेस वी हैव टू क्रिएट सो मेनी कॉपीज ऑफ डेटा स्ट्रक्चर? डेटा स्ट्रक्चर इम्यूटेबल करने का फायदा बहुत है। जैसे मैंने कहा, हमारे बग्स नहीं रहेंगे, we can have array, we can have hash, we can have map that will not be changed, correct? ये मेरे रियल वर्ल्ड प्रॉब्लम को काफी सॉल्व करेगा। डेटा स्ट्रक्चर इम्यूटेबल होना काफी रिकमेंडेड है, बट देन वी नीड टू क्रिएट सो मेनी कॉपीज। अब इसका एक दूसरा सोल्यूशन है, लेट अस हैव अ persistent डेटा स्ट्रक्चर। Now, to overcome this problem of so many copies, we are going to have an immutable data structure that supports copy on modification. I mean, this is what we call it as persistent data structure, the data structure that supports copy on modification. So you can go ahead and can refer many articles on persistent data structure. So we are very near to it. I know, तुमको बहुत सता रहा हूं मैं. So we are going to see the benefits and limitation, and that will be all for the session. When it comes to benefits of functional programming, there are many. I'm going to name few. It's easier reasoning while programming. What we have in functional programming, since we only use functions that have fixed determined input and fixed predictable output, एकदम predictable output है, तो आपको नहीं लगता कि overall code ही predictable है? अगर overall code predictable है और वो mutate होगा नहीं, so reasoning easy हो जाएगा. If there are certain problems, we can reason it out. So this makes coding very predictable, and we are sure of constraint that function will follow. So basically, writing using expressions in my program makes it more reasonable. Well, I'm not going to use any features like inheritance, encapsulation, polymorphism. So I don't have to remember things. In OP, you have to remember things. ये फंक्शन यहां से लेना है, अगर तुमको रन मेथड यूज करना है तो वो थ्रेड क्लास का होना चाहिए इन मल्टी थ्रेडिंग। इफ यू कैन रिकॉल, याद करो वो टाइम। यहां पे कुछ याद करना नहीं है, नो कॉग्निटिव ओवरलोड। अनलाइक ओपी, वी डोंट हैव टू कीप ट्रैक ऑफ मेथड्स, ऑब्जेक्ट, स्टेट ऑफ द ऑब्जेक्ट। यहाँ पे प्योरली फंक्शन बेस्ड है, सो वी जस्ट हैव टू कीप वेरी लेस इन माइंड। And like the way I said, one transaction at a time. So it works on the principle of single transformation. And so we can forget about other function. जब जरूरत होगी तो देखेंगे. We can focus on particular function at that instant. So it basically reduces your cognitive overload. Well, since it is collection of small function, हर फंक्शन का अपना predefined fixed behavior है. So हमारा जो solution space है वो भी काफी predictable है और काफी small है, constrained है. Easier debugging. In fact, people says debugger use ही नहीं करना पड़ता. There are so many functional programmer. I have seen their blogs. I have seen their articles. They say that they have not used debugger only since ages, because I mean the code is more clean. Like the way I said, the code is more clean and it is pure function. कुछ भी program के scope के बाहर use ही नहीं होगा. मैंने कहा हम उसी variables पे काम करेंगे जो function के scope के अंदर होगा. So I mean, it is easier to debug because we can easily zero down on the problems. Yes. Here, the programs are not written as instruction, but they are written as expression. So code is more readable. हमारे पास complicated statement नहीं है. हमारे पास बिल्कुल complicated statement नहीं है. हमारे पास सिर्फ expression है. मैंने कहा ना, अगर expression के बारे में याद करना है तो conditional operator use करो. वो expression का एक तुम्हें visualization देगा. So basically working with this, which makes our code easy to understand. We have fixed defined function with set of arguments. Saner parallelization. When I say saner parallelization, means this parallelization will make more sense. This concurrency will make more sense. Like the way the objects are immutable and the state of the objects are not going to change. It is not important here. When the state of the object is not important, we can have functional programming languages, which we have observed this, it tends to give better parallelization and concurrency, better modularization and reuse. See, here we don't use larger classes. मैंने कहा ना कि हमारे पास बिल्कुल ऐसे बड़े-बड़े क्लास नहीं है. मैंने कहा ना इनहेरिटेंस, एक क्लास को इनहेरिट करो तो उसके साथ पूरा खानदान आ जाता है तुम्हारे पास. ऐसा बिल्कुल नहीं है. सो यहाँ रियूजेबिलिटी, इनफैक्ट मैंने कहा ना वहां रियूजेबिलिटी इनहेरिटेंस में बैगेज है यार. तुमको पापा के फीचर चाहिए, दादा परदादा सारे के सारे फीचर्स आ गए तुम्हारे पास. नॉट नीडेड. सो हियर वी डोंट हैव लार्ज क्लासेस. इंस्टेड we have few function and then it facilitates reusing. जैसे मैंने कहा, मैंने बहुत सारी चीजें बात की हैं. That will I hope make function programming lovable. But जैसे मैंने कहा भाई, कितना भी आप प्यार करो उसे, कुछ ना कुछ limitations तो होंगे ही. Yes. मैंने आपसे कहा कि जब हम बात करते हैं फंक्शनल ऑब्जेक्ट ओरिएंटेड प्रोग्रामिंग, द कोड हैज साइड इफेक्ट बिकॉज द ऑब्जेक्ट्स आर म्यूटेबल. आपके जो वेरिएबल है वो चेंज होते हैं. बट अगर बेटा हम सही दुनिया में बात करें, फंक्शनल प्रोग्रामिंग में बिल्कुल साइड इफेक्ट नहीं है. बट आपको नहीं लगता कि व्हेन आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट रियल वर्ल्ड प्रॉब्लम, इट हैज टू हैव अ साइड इफेक्ट. सो रियल वर्ल्ड प्रॉब्लम हैव टू हैव अ साइड इफेक्ट. इट मस्ट हैव साइड इफेक्ट. एंड मतलब क्यों? बिकॉज आई हैव टू हैव an access to IO, I have to talk to database, my code has to talk to database, it has to resolve. तो अब क्या करना है? फंक्शन प्रोग्रामिंग को भी कुछ हैक्स करने हैं भाई. The function programming has to resort to some hacks so that ये जो स्टफ है ये हम कर पाए. See, हमने क्या किया है यहाँ पे? हमने फंक्शनल प्रोग्रामिंग के रूप में एक ब्यूटीफुल एनवायरनमेंट क्रिएट किया है. बट एक ऐसा एनवायरनमेंट है जिसको कोई यूज नहीं कर पा रहा है रियल वर्ल्ड में. सो इसीलिए मैंने कहा वी नीड टू बिल्ड सर्टेन ब्रिजेस. We need to build certain gaps. We need to fill those gaps so that we can effectively use it in the environment where OP is used. And like the way I said, it will make more sense to the people, and people will start using it. It will eventually become even more popular. Difficult to grasp. अब ये जो term है ना बहुत relative है. मैं इसको बोल रहा हूँ difficult to grasp क्यों मालूम है? In fact, for beginner, because it is not the way we are programmed. हम 9वीं 10वीं से जो प्रोग्रामिंग पढ़ रहे हैं, कुछ बच्चे 8वीं 9 बचपन से ही प्रोग्रामिंग पढ़ रहे हैं, उनको बेटा फंक्शनल प्रोग्रामिंग के रूप में ग्रास्प, उनको स्टेटमेंट सिखाया गया है. उनको हमेशा से लिखाया गया है कि भाई एक एक्सप्रेशन के लिए 10 स्टेटमेंट लिख दो. उनको ये सिखाया नहीं गया कि नहीं 10 स्टेटमेंट की जगह एक एक्सप्रेशन लिखो. So because that's the way we are programmed. Real world problem, it tends to be procedural. So अब हम क्या करते हैं कि we borrow these concepts from functional programming. Laziness. मैंने कहा अब तो बोला सर laziness फायदा है. Obviously. But laziness क्या होता है? सारे evaluation run time होते हैं बेटा. तो वो जो performance, it becomes difficult to gauge the performance and the time benefits. We don't know कौन सा वेरिएबल कब इन्वोक होने वाला है. So अगर वो मुझे एनालिसिस करना है, थोड़ा सा दिक्कत हो रहा है. Yes, it is difficult for code for hardware, and this is the reason C++ are not going anywhere actually. So it tends to be more trendy, and the things they are superior breed. And well, I know this is limitation. ये मुझे मेरे हिसाब से. So this was actually all about. I mean, I never intended to talk this much, but eventually it goes on. And this was all about. I was supposed to talk about functional programming. It all our started way back from different paradigm, different types of style of programming. When we talked about procedure, we talked about object-oriented. Then we talked about the kind of shortcomings that we experienced. I mean, the people in the real world experience we might not have, because I mean, we need to at the end of the day create such kind of code. And then we eventually talked about various the shortcomings that can occur in OP. You know, if you try to summarize the overall, you know, if you want me to summarize, it can be something like this. In OP, there are mutable objects. The problem lies there. Objects are mutated in program by methods. So this makes it unsafe. This creates side effect. And this causes overall pillars to crumble and collapse. So, and what is the only benefit that function provide is immutable object. So the base make changes in the object there. You're not going to talk in terms of functions. You're writing code in terms of statement. And in functional, your objects are not to be mutated. You'll be writing code in terms of expressions. So this was about limitations. And this was all from my side. I know I have taken a lot of your time. And this was all from my side there. Yes. And in fact, there are many tools also, beta. Mohibuddin, there are many tools also which actually does this. And if you want to write me something, this is me, sanjeev.dwivedi@vit.edu.in. Python functional programming. Well, beta, Shreyas, Python को ना multi-paradigm भी कहा जाता है. So it is kind of object-oriented as well as functional. ठीक है? Yes, Python does. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Python is multi-paradigm. We can call it as multi-paradigm. So I guess this is all from my side. I hope I made some sense. I hope I'm able to convince you to at least go and read those articles. I'm not saying you love something, you hate something. You know what? Getting information, being informed is the minimal that an engineer should be having. Engineer should be informed. So I just tried to inform you something about functional programming. This was all from my side. Yeah, my email ID is there, beta. It's sanjeev Mohibuddin. It's sanjeev.dwivedi@vit.edu.in. So VIT is the place where I work. It's my alma mater. I'm doing my research, PhD research from here. Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Nidhi. Coursera courses. You have a lot of Coursera courses, beta. Shreyas, lot of Coursera courses. I mean, see, before you start with Coursera courses, you can just go through some of the videos that are there on YouTube. You can just simply type functional programming. Yeah, there is some guy, Prometheus. But a lot of Coursera courses. But actually, if you, I mean, they're not exploring it in deep detail. You should not type functional programming, but rather you can type, okay, You can type Haskell. You can do a lot of courses in Haskell. We can do some courses in Haskell. Thank you, Mridula. Thank you, Arshada. Thank you, Tamanna. Shreyas, thank you, beta. Chetan, thank you. Ayushi, thank you. Mariam, thank you. So, I don't know. Shall we continue or we can stop our session and you can enjoy the great evening? I've taken a lot of time, but I hope, I made it worth. I don't know. I don't know. I tried my best.
Thank you, Sanjeev sir, for such a wonderful webinar. In case you all have any doubts, you can contact sir via the email ID mentioned in the feedback form. And a gentle reminder, you all have to fill the feedback form to get the certificate, and the link will be active only for an hour. We'll conclude this event. Thank you.